A Marvel star promises that there's going to be bigger pop moments in the Avengers Doomsday, even bigger, perhaps 50 times bigger than Blade in the Deadpool and Wolverine movie. And also, Netflix is clearing out a huge chunk of its library this month. And there is a report indicating why African films are being shut out of most global film festivals. We'll be delving into all these stories and more right here on the Film Mandate. My name is Papa Otu. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to the Film Mandate, where I bring to you movie news, reviews, and reactions, both from the African front and the international scene. And thanks for joining me for this live stream of this very episode. So we'll be delving into all these stories, just a cover up of these stories. So we have Channing Tatum, who was interviewed on Entertainment Online, E Online, and he did hint or promise that fans will be blown out of their minds when they see some of the pop moments, which would be as big as 50 times, even more than that of what we experienced when we saw Wesley Snipes' Blade on screen in the Deadpool and Wolverine movie. And also, Netflix is gearing up to clear a huge chunk of its film library this month. So you ought to really watch out as we delving into the story and know some of the movies that are being cleared out this month. And also there is an article that has been published that indicates why a lot of African films are being left out of the global film festival circuit. So we'll be delving into all these stories to find out the details of it and discuss them as we go along. So starting with our very first story, well, we all know that the Avengers Doomsday finished shooting not too long ago, and they just wrapped up filming. And prior to that, there were a lot of rumors as to who may be starring in this film and who may not be starring. And then we had the experience of the chair watch, which was almost, I think, 5 hours long. That brought, that showcased a lot of names of the big, expected cast from multiple MCU films whose name were printed at the back of the chairs. And thereafter, they went into filming, and even whilst filming, there were a lot of rumors as to who may be appearing and who may not be appearing. Well, after they were done, and everything, we had Channing Tatum on the red carpet promoting his film when he was interviewed, and he did actually hint at the possible big moments that we are likely to experience, even 50 times bigger than what we had when it came to seeing Wesley Snipes, and I must even add, seeing Jennifer Garner on screen. And those moments were perhaps some of the biggest highlights of the Deadpool and Wolverine movie. And it looks like, from all indications as of this moment, even from a lot of speculations and analysis by a lot of film pundits, it looks like the Russo brothers and Marvel has taken a leaf from the Deadpool and Wolverine movie and are trying to implement similar strategy with regards to the Avengers Doomsday movie. And definitely it will be out of, aside what they want to do to make sure that it becomes a bigger event film compared to what they were able to achieve in Avengers Endgame. They also want to rely on perhaps nostalgic moments where our favorite stars that have appeared or featured in a number of Marvel films over the years, whether belonging, within or under the umbrella of the Marvel Studios proper, or previously with the 20th Century Fox, now 20th Century under Disney, or even the Sony. They want to fall on that moment to give us that excitement, that nostalgic moments that we so much, desire to have seen. And that is one thing that the Deadpool and Wolverine was able to do so well, to the extent that the 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 Deadpool and Wolverine movie, even after making over 1 billion and hitting the streams, had a life of its own, and had a lot of people going to watch what happened in the movie, just to experience it all over again. Well, it looks like that is what Channing Tatum is promising us. Actually, he's not hinting; he's promising us. Definitely, he's under an NDA where he cannot reveal much as to what is happening with regards to um, who we are to expect and all that. And there are so several indicators already as to who may appear, even though they were not mentioned in the chair watch. But on a larger scale, most of us know that there are going to be a lot of what's it called? There's going to be a lot of, the Avengers team, even those that have not been mentioned yet. There is the greater possibility of likely seeing them, instances of possible Halle Berry, showing up as Storm is very likely, and also so many others. Even Alan Cumming, who has reprised this role as the Nightcrawler, was interviewed and was asked whether Halle Berry is likely to show in the Avengers Doomsday. She just went on to say maybe, and went ahead to say that he is not the best person to sort of, be asked this question. Obviously, a lot of us who might have been following him in some of the interviews, he did actually leak a possible plot point that exists or that might have happened in the Avengers Doomsday that he shot, even though he confirmed that he shot alone on a green screen. But all that being said, one of the questions that when this came up, I kept asking myself is this just a hype, or is the fanboy in Channing Tatum that is, geeking out about all these, happenings? And well, we know Channing Tatum to be a comic book fan, a diehard comic book fan, having worked on, he was almost on the verge of shooting Gambit under the 20th Century Fox studio banner when the merger happened, or when the acquisition of 20th Century Fox happened and the plug was pulled. Well, hopefully or thankfully, he was brought back via, Ryan Reynolds in his Deadpool and Wolverine movie, and now we are so excited to have him in the Marvel MCU proper. So, well, I did watch the interview, and it did actually point to the fact that he is genuinely, geeking out. He's genuinely, overjoyed about what he discovered in the script, and even questioning as to whether the Russo brothers will be able to achieve this. Well, already from a couple of the films we did watch in the Marvel universe prior to even Endgame, and particularly Endgame, we had several of these moments. These were not like new characters being introduced altogether, but in terms of moments that popped so big that it sort of made fans go out of their minds. And I'm sure a lot of you might have watched it, like the moment when Captain America was able to raise the Mjolnir just to hit Thanos and prevent Thanos from killing Thor. So there's been such moments like that, and on your left, not the one seen in the Captain America Winter Soldier, but when Anthony Mackie's Falcon character spoke on the intercom before the portal, the Doctor Strange portal was open, and you had all the contingents coming to support Captain America to defeat the armies of Thanos. So there's been a lot of these moments, pop moments, sprawled out all over in the Avengers movie. And I think definitely I can actually understand what the Russo brothers maybe or want to go for, even make it much eventful and far bigger than what we have experienced in the end game, because I very much think that that is what a lot of fans would like to see. And particularly for those who are die-hard comic book fans and know the source material like the back of their hands. I'm sure the Russo brothers will capitalize on this opportunity to perhaps almost literally frame some of the scenes almost like that of the panels for most fans to geek out even the more. So it is quite understandable that that is what they'll be going for. Well, even prior to even doing this, starting or doing this live stream, I chanced upon a story where the Russo brothers has posted an image. I think is it Anthony or I think Joe Russo in a black and white shot, which is a similar picture to that of a picture that he released prior to the Avengers Endgame releasing in the cinemas. And unfortunately, I don't have it up, but it did. He wanted fans to sort of glean the photo and pick out some clues that may indicate what may likely happen or transpire in the Avengers Doomsday. And obviously, in as much as even there was even rumors that there was going to be a second chair watch, but in as much as that has not been done, we still, are speculating. A lot of fans are speculating that there's going to be the likelihood of other characters whose names have not been mentioned, and I think rightfully so. I think that should be done. In Unfortunately, because of the world we live in right now, information leaks don't seem. It's very difficult to keep information tight-lipped prior to it being screened. But whatever be the case, to have some of the characters hidden prior to us seeing them on screen will be a very big, revelation and excitement for all who will be there in the cinemas to watch it come December or December 2026. So it is quite exciting, I must say. And I know for sure that Channing Tatum is not just, it's not just a PR stunt. It could be, but it's not just a PR stunt. But I know that is what the Russo brothers would be aiming for together with Marvel to get a win so bad that hits the same level as the Avengers Endgame, seeing that a number of their movies after Endgame haven't really endeared themselves well with audiences. And I think in as much as that has happened, I believe that all audiences are hoping for the very best for Marvel with the hope that it's going to be a great movie, even possibly far better than what Avengers Endgame delivered. So I must say it is something that we are all looking for with the hope that it will be much bigger and better than what we are seeing. But just a recap, we know that this film is going to feature not just our favorite characters, but it's going to feature also groups of people within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So we're going to likely see the X-Men, which we saw in the chair watch, Fantastic Four, obviously, and we're going to have the Avengers and then the Thunderbolts also reprising their roles in there. So there's going to be different sets of team ups within the Avengers movie itself. Even possibly have a sect of the Eternals reprising their role. I mean, anything is possible within this particular Avengers IP. So it's going to be quite a big moment when finally we are able to reconcile all these, hype and mystery as to who will be starring in this film, and hopefully Marvel returning to form in that very stature that we so much liked when this whole MCU began. So let me know what you think in particular with regards to how the anticipation is building up so massively for the Avengers End Game. Sorry, Avengers Doomsday having been teased a little bits and pieces in the what's it called, the Fantastic Four, and a little bit of what we saw in the post-credit scene of Thunderbolts. Whatever your thoughts may be, kindly leave it in the comments section below. So that is quite an exciting news. And now we are moving on to our second story. And with our second story, a lot of with how times have evolved, particularly after the pandemic era, it looks like streaming has become part and parcel of our lives to the extent that a lot of individuals or people have moved away from securing their films on digital media to on physical media to now relying on the streaming services and digital media to buy, to keep their copies online so that it's accessible anywhere they find themselves. Well, one of such streaming services that is, that has a lot of subscribers on is Netflix. And just recently, news have come, or they have indicated that a large chunk of their films are going to be taken down, and for whatever that reason may be. Obviously, some being that perhaps their licensing agreement has expired, to maybe other reasons that may not be known to us. Well, it's been actually indicated that a large chunk is going to be taken out of their platform, and this is captured in the independent online website. Let's quickly take a look at some of the films that are likely to leave their platform this very month. And let me just pause this before. Okay, so starting from actually 1st October, which was just, well, it's past midnight now, so it was just yesterday. We have The Age of Innocence, Alpha, the American Graffiti. They are quite voluminous. Let me just carefully scan through them as you watch and see which films that perhaps would break your heart when you don't have them on the streaming services anymore. But it is quite voluminous when it comes to the amount of films that are likely to be taken down, or that will be taken down this very October. And even starting from just 1st October, which was just yesterday, these are all the films that are going to be taken down. And it is indeed going to be quite a challenge for those who perhaps might have subscribed to Netflix due to one or two of these films, due to some of these films. So it's going to be quite heartbreaking that for those who don't have physical media copies of these films, may not be able to access it anymore. So it is going to be quite a challenge. And for those who perhaps might have planned to watch these films anytime soon and may not be available on the Netflix streaming platform. So it is quite voluminous, and it looks like it's quite a progressive move of taking down a number of these films. And unfortunately, those who may not have any other streaming services where these films can be found may not be able to watch it when this finally is done. So I must admit that it's quite sad that that is happening. But the question now we need to ask ourselves is that, is it just as a result of licensing expiring, so that, or it is perhaps an intentional thing being done by Netflix, so in order to be able to, what's it called, make room to have most of their original content, be more visible to audiences, or there is perhaps more to it? I'm sure this will now, sort of create a conversation, an ongoing conversation as to how reliable are streaming services in this era, when a lot of these, digital platforms are taking down content that perhaps they love so much. And you may remember quite recently, I think this year, well, not too recently, but this year, Microsoft had to take down I think they shut down their digital platform where you can find a lot of their movies on. I'm not so, I've forgotten which platform it is. I think it's one of their gaming console where you're able to buy a number of digital films so that you can watch via the gaming console platform. And it looks like this is happening quite often nowadays, where certain titles or films are taken off certain digital platforms or streaming services, even sometimes without ample knowledge or information or time before it is taken down. So this is becoming quite a problem. And so the question would be how, with this knowledge, how is this going to impact a lot of viewing habits of audiences? Does this, looking at how things are going, would it cause audience to now resort to having digital physical media backups, especially of their favorite films that they cannot do without, perhaps films that they like watching periodically, and it's become perhaps an event thing for them. So those are questions that perhaps we would have to, going forward, I'm sure a lot of studios may have to, ponder on to see whether having maybe just a few digital copies in some of the stores would be a reasonable venture to embark on. And I can understand why a lot of film studios are moving away from this, because having films on the digital platform is easy accessible everywhere or anywhere you may be in the world. So these are, I'm sure, are conversations that is going to really keep people inquiring or asking themselves, is it even worth it to have a digital platform where at certain times when you least expect, it will be taken down without you even knowing. Assuming that you don't even know, you don't even hear this information, there will come a time you go onto your streaming platform and turn it on to watch a film that you love, only to realize that it is no more there. So this is really going to cause a lot of, I don't know whether to say discomfort for fans who, or for subscribers who actually have, sorry, who, pardon me for my tag, but yeah, who actually have more, whose whole film catalog are actually on streaming platforms. And this is going to be quite a challenge. I must admit, it's going to be quite a challenge. So the question to ask ourselves is that how are they going to, how is this going to influence their viewing habits, and should they resort to having digital copies of the films, or sorry, physical copies of the film, so that in an instance where such incident occurs again, they know that their favorite movies are still with them and they own it without the untimely, taking down of some of these films. So let me know what you think. What do you think in general? Do you think perhaps physical media copies should return in the advent of some of these things happening? Or maybe there should be a bundle service where you have all the streaming platforms in one package, to the extent that when one film leaves one streaming platform, you know that it's going to be in another, platform for you to watch. So whatever your thoughts may be, kind of leave your suggestion or your thoughts in the comment section below. Okay, so with this already shown, we come to a story that is dear to my heart, because I'm in Africa, and I love film so much, and I know that I'll be happy to have or see a lot of African films that are doing well locally, be it in my country or on the continent at large, have the opportunity to be seen on the world stage, wherever that may be. And one of the ways or opportunities that a lot of African films get to be seen on the world stage is via film festivals. And we have been fortunate, to see a couple of films, being prominent this year, from My Father's Shadow to even the documentary, which hails from Ghana, where I am, doing this live stream, particularly from, is The Eyes of Ghana, which had Academy Award winner Ben Proudfoot directing, supported or produced by Anita Afonu, a colleague of mine that I know back from the tertiary days. And these are films, that sometimes, fortunately, they are a breakout in the film festival circuits. We also have Fisherman, which I had opportunity to work on, also go around the world to win a couple of awards for itself. So film festival actually becomes one of the main, avenues where a lot of good African films get to see the light of day or get to be shown to a wider audience than otherwise it would have been when it is being, shown on just the African continent or in just the countries of origin. And there is an article that, a Ghana Business News article that indicates how the it looks like some of there are a number of issues that pertains to why some African films don't get the opportunity to receive such, wider exposure than it would have, we would have hoped it would have received. And well, I want to just read a brief section of the article in the Ghana Business News that highlights what may be some of the challenge why this is the case. So this is what it has to say, that with so this is the title, How African Films Are Missing from Festivals Around the World. So with Africa's biggest film fest in Durban, now a distant memory, some of the globe's finest creatives may be seen in Venice. Amal Clooney, Idris Elba, Kanayo O Kanayo, Lalisa Manobal, Mariam Tuzani, and Walter Moreira Salles were among the celebs likely in town. Sadly, the fest is showcasing only 5 films from Africa. Just to note, this article was written, I think, somewhere September 4th, so it is quite, it's an age-old article. But I think whatever they are stating hasn't changed and is still relevant now. That is why I'm doing this story. So it goes on to say that next up will be Toronto, September 4th to 14th. After that, cinephiles will move to Rio de Janeiro, then Zurich and Hamburg. These are international fests, right? But they are not if they self-censor, avoiding some sacred holy cows and the marginalists, and to paraphrase activist and historian Dr. Hannah LCC, tokenize talent and stories from Africa and elsewhere. For one, Toronto will showcase almost 300 films. Out of that are 3 films from Brazil and 8 from Africa, or co-produced with Africans. Contrast that with nearly 20 British-only projects. Tolu Lope Itegboje, directed Bam Bam, Mother's Love, and Stitches are the only films with no overseas partners. So I think Stitches is directed by our own Ghanaian, the prolific filmmaker that is Shirley Frimpong Manso. So I'm glad it's in it's in the limelight as it's in. But I think it's produced as a Nollywood production together with Shirley Frimpong Manso. I don't know whether it will be termed as a Nollywood Black Star Films co-production film. But yeah, so that is it. So if African talent weren't underrated, why would Durban, Toronto, Venice, and so on invite a trickle from here? African governments, the AU, and creatives are silent. It is about time that international stages judge African films as individuals for their quality rather than searching for A, time warp, or B, cliche, death and despair and devastation, to misquote Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Why would Africa have a single distorted story? So let me just leave it here. This article is really packed, and I think I'll leave the link in the description below, and it would indeed be wonderful to read the article in its entirety to know what it has to offer. But this article is really packed, and it highlights some of the issues that we face as Africa For some reason, I may not be able to pinpoint because I'm still, a student of film in the industry at large. But this article did highlight some of the glaring issues when it comes to Africa on the world stage, not just even in the film festival circuit, but generally. And just as if you did watch my one of the episodes I did, I think 2 days ago or a day ago, I was speaking about the top 10 African films on the Netflix, chart, and you only had just Nigeria and South Africa on the top 10. Meanwhile, Africa consists of more than 50 countries, and arguably so, one of the reasons why they would, it's so is because a lot of African countries, the market, in terms of market, Netflix don't have much, it doesn't have much penetration into those markets. So where they have those much market presence is where they source for some of these films, and it's understandably so. But sometimes it actually does well to even go out of your way to have other countries' film represented, and by so doing may even entice others to grab onto the Netflix subscription. But unfortunately, that is the case. It's not just found in the film festival circuits, but this challenge is found across board in a lot of areas. And rightfully so, a lot of the productions being done or being hailed as African are actually co-production. They are not like mainly made entirely by Africans within the continent alone. And it is indeed quite a challenge. So one of the challenges we are faced with on a larger scale is the fact that, do we have are we being judged by what is actually seen or what has been seen or noticed in the past? Or perhaps there is more to it than meets the eye. And that is something that we need to actually engage the governments of the day, not even the film festival runners, but more so the governments of the day of Africa need to sit up and actually ask what can be done to leverage, to provide leverage to help us, up our game if the issue has to do with even production value. But over the years, consistently, a lot of African films have proven that we could do films that could equally rub shoulder with any filmmaker from any part of the world. But the challenge has always been that there is always a difficulty in sometimes breaking through into some of these film festivals. And what is even sad out of the article, what is even sad even of all, is the fact that even to have an African film festival organized here in Africa, only 5 films were in terms of from across Africa had much presence there. And not just that, but it shows how difficult African films have in breaking into the limelight when it comes to the global landscape of film. And that is a challenge. And I think this article actually hits at important issues that the stakeholders, particularly from Africa, need to really sit up and work on when it has to do with particularly African film festivals on the continent. Because if it is African Film Festival on the continent, then it means that Africa ought to be represented heavily. And I'm not just talking about just the general African film festivals that are being organized, but the main, prestigious ones on the continent as such. So there's a lot of issues that perhaps we need to navigate. And obviously, some of the specific hurdles that we are always confronted with is funding, and that has always been a challenge. And not just funding for production, but in terms of international marketing and promotion. And that is one of the biggest hurdles when it comes to African productions. A lot of films are short. And you see, also as a result of how passionate the filmmakers are, you want to tell your story, and sometimes all you have is just the money to do your principal photography. Sometimes even not having enough money to do your post production, and it will be short. And some of the films are so excellently done, but then when they are done without the necessary funding to help market it and promote it, it ends up just remaining on the shelf, collecting dust. And these are, I mean, you can talk to several filmmakers who have found themselves in such a rut like this. And so it looks like these are things that the continent of Africa, the leaders, stakeholders on this continent must consciously do. We must be conscious about making sure that we elevate the standard of the film industry in Africa as a whole. And that is some of the challenges we need to really navigate around. Buyer selection committees, which could be the case. I cannot specify, and I do not know, I'll be honest, but it is very likely that there will be preferential treatment or selection made for films that come from industries that are well established and that are also particularly box office draw, and also in terms of the likelihood for it to be a critical acclaim film, preference will be given to those industries uh, compared to that of Africa. And so these are challenges that perhaps we may not be able to overcome soon, since it's already a difficult terrain to navigate. However, my consistent plea or my consistent advocacy would be for having an integrated African film market. Listen, when a market is big enough, when the market is very lucrative, just as projections have been made that come 2030, Africa is likely to make $20 billion annually from the film industry on the continent. So when the world film industries realize how lucrative the film market is in Africa, the likelihood of them wanting a piece of the pie is going to be high. And that also would give us the opportunity to leverage and demand for, perhaps equity when it comes to, our films on the world stage. As it stands now, because of how lucrative China's film industry is, US always have their films, permeating into that market to get a stake of the film market annually. And I think that is something that we can do for ourselves. But it has to start from home. It has to start from putting right, some of the necessary, infrastructure, policy, and data to help prove that Africa is a force to contend with and needs to be given equal, if not even equal, a very appreciable attention or appreciable stake in what happens in the film market or in the film landscape all over the world. So it is quite a challenge, because this exclusion actually becomes or creates a vicious cycle, and where we get less international distribution. And that is a fact. There are films that are very good and perhaps needs to be seen in certain, multiplexes, whether in the US or China and other places. But because of this kind of situation we find ourselves in, it doesn't get the needed international, the wide distribution that it needs. And it also goes in turn to hurt the filmmakers, these talented filmmakers who are behind this property. So it is something that I believe that if we really want to build a formidable industries, the leaders on this continent and that of the stakeholders in the film bodies on the continent need to take it serious and create a table for ourselves. If we are not going to be given a portion on, a part to be, on the table of the film landscape in the world, at least we need to make sure that our table has us representing, fully and making the needed impacts that we ought to make. So these are relevant issues that ought to really be discussed. And I believe that we can make that happen. We can make that happen, because until, most film studios out there with their bigger machinery and how well they are able to make their monies, like, the article, like the Marvel films, likely to clock 1 billion. Assuming it's even a film made for the film festival circuits, the likelihood for it to receive much attention is very high, and it's understandably so. So it means that we also have to position ourselves such that we can also demand that attention where needed. And it starts from home. It has to start from home. So let me know what you think when it comes to this, this story of the possibility of African films not receiving the needed, attention, and perhaps the likelihood of exclusivity being excluded from some of these festivals, maybe not intentionally, but whatever policies may be in place to give preference to other film industries films, one way or the other, will lead to excluding perhaps very good films that may not be receiving the necessary attention, perhaps due to lack of funding to do the promotion and a whole lot. Let me know what you think about this report found in the Ghana Business News article, of which you can read it in the description, below. So let me know your thoughts on this topic in the comment section below. So all these stories are critical issues, not just a regional one, and I think we all need to really pay a careful attention to it, because the health of the global cinema depends on the diverse voices that ought to be heard. As it stands now, just a segue to lead to my last story. You have anime films making it big in the US at this moment because it's been given opportunity to be heard. And I hope that we'll come to a point where all voices, regardless of whatever country it comes from, will be heard. And with regards to that, it leads into my second, my bonus story, actually, my bonus story. And that has to do with the Oscar Minute, the best international feature, where it gives opportunity for all the world film industries' voice to be heard one way or the other. And this time around, for those who have been observing me, or who have been observing the film landscape, the film news landscape, a lot of countries are tendering in their pick for the Oscars in terms of the best international feature. And none other than an African country, South Africa, has also presented theirs with regards to their best international feature. And so let's quickly visit Good Things Guys website and read just a little about it. So this is what he has to say. A South African film has been selected for entry into the next year's Oscars. And it says that South Africa, the National Film and Video Foundation has announced that The Heart is a Muscle, written and directed by Imran Hamdullah, has been selected to represent South Africa at the 98th Academy Awards, the Oscars, in the Best International Feature Film category next year. The film has been given its flowers internationally already, with its win of the Panorama Ecumenical Jury Prize at the Berlin International Film Festival and screenings at Sydney and Cairo festivals. Now it's carrying Essay's hopes into Hollywood. The movie tells the story of Ryan, a young father in Cape Town whose son goes missing. The disappearance is just the beginning. What comes next is a meditation on fatherhood, masculinity, and the long shadows cast by inherited trauma. The film looks closely at intergenerational wounds on the Cape Flats, while also reaching for that universal slow hard work of forgiveness and belonging. And this indeed is amazing, seeing that Imran's film has already been gaining some attention on the world stage with regards to some of the film festivals that he has already won some awards in. And this is the hope that we've been all desiring for, particularly from the African perspective, the voices from this continent with regards to films will be heard. And that is what I am, gunning for, hoping for, that a lot of African films will be represented. As it stands now, yes, it will have to go through a process where finally there will be a short list of best international feature films. And since the time of Chochi, I think we've never received, Africa hasn't, okay, well, South Africa hasn't received any other nominations yet in the best international feature category. And hopefully, maybe this could be the one to bring them back to Hollywood once again. So let me know what you think with regards to this particular development as to South Africa submitting this film for the best international feature category. The heart is a muscle, and this is what we all want to see more of. And soon I've come to the end of my live stream for today's episode of the Film Mandate. I trust that you enjoyed yourself, and whatever you think, whatever questions or thoughts you have, you want to ask, kindly leave them in the comment section below. And I appreciate you for joining me for this episode of the Film Mandate. I'll come your way once again with another exciting episode of the Film Mandate tomorrow with exciting stories from all over the world. My name is Papa O2, and thanks for joining me, and I'll see you tomorrow.